Have you ever felt like the country's rules are written in some secret code you can't quite crack? Well, today, we're handing you the user manual. We are diving into Part 3 of the Indian Constitution, which is all about your fundamental rights. Seriously, think of this as a personal toolkit, something guaranteed to you the second you become a citizen.
So let's just jump right in with a big question. What are the rules that actually protect you from the government? Because at the end of the day, that's exactly what fundamental rights are. These aren't just some lofty, abstract ideas. They are your personal shield. So the real question is, how does this shield actually work?
Okay, first things first. Before we even get into what our rights are, we need to be crystal clear on who we are protected from. The Constitution uses a very specific word for this, and honestly, it's the key that unlocks everything else.
And that word is the state. Now, under Article 12, the state isn't just the big central government in Delhi. Nope. It's your state government, it's parliament, it's your local city council, even your village panchayat. Basically, it's any and every authority that's under government control. These are the powerful bodies that your fundamental rights are designed to hold accountable. But you know what? The courts didn't just stop there. They pushed this definition even further. They came up with something called the instrumentality test, where they started asking some really smart questions to see if a company or an organization is basically an arm of the government. Like, is it getting a ton of money from the state? Does the government have, deep and pervasive control over it? This test is exactly how bodies like LIC and ONGC got included under the definition of state, which means our rights apply way more broadly than you might think.
So, we know who our rights are against. But what happens if the state goes and passes a law that just stomps all over one of our rights? That's where Article 13 steps in. It's like the ultimate guardian, the bouncer at the door of our rights. It says, flat out, that any law, doesn't matter if it's new or old, that clashes with your fundamental rights is, to put it simply, void. It's a constitutional dead end for bad laws.
Okay, but what if a whole law isn't bad? Just imagine this. A new law gets passed, and it's 99% totally fine. But there's this one tiny section, just one little clause, that messes with a fundamental right. Do we have to scrap the whole thing?
Nope. And this is where the genius of the Constitution really shines. The courts can use something called the doctrine of severability. They basically act like a surgeon, They can go in and precisely cut out only the unconstitutional bit, while the rest of the healthy, perfectly good law gets to stay. It's an incredibly smart and practical tool.
All right, let's get to the very first right in our toolkit, the absolute bedrock of a fair society, the right to equality. This is where the Constitution starts laying down the ground rules for what it really means to be treated as an equal citizen. Article 14 is so interesting because it really gives us two sides of the same coin. On one hand, you've got equality before law. Think of this as a negative idea. It takes away special treatment and makes sure that nobody, and I mean nobody, is above the law. Then you have equal protection of laws. This is a positive concept. It actually commands the state to treat people in similar situations equally. But, and this is key, it also allows for what's called reasonable classification.
And that little idea of reasonable classification leads us to this super important point. Sometimes treating everyone exactly the same is actually deeply unfair. The Constitution gets this, so it allows for what's called protective discrimination, or you might know it as affirmative action. This means things like special provisions for women and children, or reservations in schools and government jobs for backward classes, all to level a historically unequal playing field and create real, meaningful equality.
Okay, let's move on to the part of the toolkit that really gives us our voice and our liberty. I'm talking about Article 19. This is basically the engine room of our democracy, and it gives every single citizen 6 absolutely core freedoms.
And here they are: the freedom to say what you think, to gather peacefully with others, to form groups and unions, to travel and live anywhere you want in the country, and to choose your own job or profession. Put them all together, and these 6 freedoms are the very essence of what it means to be a free person in a democracy.
But, and believe me, this is a very important but, these freedoms are not absolute. They don't just give you a free pass to say or do whatever you want, whenever you want. There's a catch.
And that catch is that the state can impose reasonable restrictions, right? So your freedom of speech doesn't give you the right to scream fire in a packed theater just for kicks. Your freedom to assemble doesn't mean you can block the entrance to a hospital. It's all a balancing act between your individual liberty and the needs of society, things like public order, national security, and basic morality. And the key word here always is reasonable. The restrictions can't just be random or way over the top. So we've gone from big, broad freedoms to some very specific protections. This next section of our toolkit is designed to shield you from being exploited and to make sure you get a fair shot, especially if you ever find yourself in trouble with the law.
Article 20 is huge. It gives you two absolutely critical shields if you're ever in court. First, no double jeopardy. This means the state can't just keep trying to prosecute you for the same crime again and again, hoping for a win. They get one shot. Second, no self-incrimination. You cannot be forced to testify against yourself. This is the very foundation of your right to remain silent.
The Constitution also has some incredibly powerful shields against exploitation. And really, this number says it all. 14. Under Article 24, no child below the age of 14 can be forced to work in a factory, a mine, or any other dangerous job. It is a clear, bright line drawn in the sand to protect kids.
Now, a lot of rights have those reasonable restrictions we talked about. Some are absolute. There are zero exceptions, no excuses. Article 17 completely, totally abolishes the horrific practice of untouchability, and Article 23 flat out bans human trafficking and forced labor. These are evils so great that the Constitution gives them absolutely no room to breathe.
Okay, so we've got all these amazing, powerful rights. But let's be real. What good is a right if you can't actually enforce it? This brings us to the final and maybe the most important tool in our entire constitutional toolkit, the power to make all these rights a reality. You don't have to take my word for it. Just listen to what Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the main architect of our Constitution, said about Article 32. He called it the very soul of the Constitution. The soul. Why? Well, because this is the article that gives you the right to go straight to the Supreme Court if your fundamental rights are violated. It turns a promise on paper into a real power you can actually use. So when it comes to getting justice, you've basically got two main paths. You can go to a high court under Article 226 for any legal right violation, but they can choose whether or not to hear your case. But, and this is the game changer, going to the Supreme Court under Article 32 for a fundamental rights violation is itself a fundamental right. This means the Supreme Court cannot refuse to hear you. That's what makes it the ultimate guarantor of your rights. So how do the courts actually do it? How do they enforce your rights? They use 5 incredibly powerful legal commands called writs. Think of them as your legal weapons. For instance, if someone is locked up illegally, the court issues a writ of habeas corpus, which literally means produce the body. If a government official just isn't doing their job, the court can issue a mandamus, commanding them to act. Each writ is a specific tool designed to fix a specific injustice. This is your power in action.
So there you have it. That's your constitutional toolkit. From the right to be treated equally, to the freedom to speak your mind, all the way up to the power to demand justice from the highest court in the land. These rights aren't just for stuffy lawyers to debate in courtrooms. They belong to you. They give you real power. So the only question left is, how are you going to use it?